Carmela Rose was just the timid nurse everyone dismissed at the military hospital. Insecure, eyes downcast, always ignored by arrogant doctors who treated her like she was incompetent. But when a wounded and delirious SEAL Admiral arrived in the ER violently attacking anyone who came close, refusing treatment, and dying before everyone's eyes, Carmela whispered a call sign that no one should have known. In seconds, the most dangerous man in the room froze, recognizing the voice of someone who shouldn't exist. What the doctors didn't know is that the clumsy nurse had a past that would make them all kneel, and the Admiral was about to discover that the woman holding his life in her hands was the legend he thought had died in combat. If stories of hidden heroes, military secrets, and shocking revelations get your heart racing, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Drop a comment if you think you can guess Carmela's real identity before the big reveal. The emergency room at Naval Medical Center San Diego operated like a well-oiled machine until the machine started breaking. Carmela Rose stood at the nurse's station. Her dirty blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail with loose strands falling around her face. Her medium blue scrubs hung loose on her small 5'4" frame, deliberately oversized to hide the compact athletic build underneath. She kept her gray-blue eyes downcast, staring at the medication tray in her trembling hands. "Rose, Dr. Marcus Thorne's voice cracked across the ER like a whip. "How many times do I have to tell you? The IV goes in the left arm for surgical prep. Left. Can you manage that? Or should I get someone competent?" Carmela flinched, her shoulders hunching forward instinctively. "Yes, doctor. I'm sorry, doctor." Thorne was 36, tall, fit from his CrossFit obsession, and wore his white coat like a crown. His perfectly styled dark hair caught the fluorescent lights as he turned to the resident beside him. "This is what happens when they lower standards. We get nurses who can't handle basic protocols." The resident, Dr. Sarah Chen, laughed appropriately. She had learned quickly that agreeing with Thorne was career advancement. "Maybe she should stick to bedpans," Chen suggested. Carmela's hands shook harder as she picked up the tray. The thin scar above her left eyebrow, usually hidden by her hair, caught the light briefly. Small shrapnel scars dotted the backs of her hands, barely visible unless someone looked closely. No one ever looked closely at Carmela Rose. She was invisible. That was the point. "Rose, you're making that patient wait," Thorne snapped, gesturing impatiently. "Move, now." Carmela hurried toward room 3, her head down, her steps short and hesitant. She could feel the eyes of the other staff on her, a mixture of pity and contempt. The incompetent nurse, the one who somehow passed the certification, but clearly didn't belong in a high-stakes military hospital. She had been working at Naval Medical Center for 8 months. 8 months of deliberate mistakes, trembling hands, and swallowed pride. 8 months of being exactly what she needed to be. Forgettable. As she entered room 3, the patient, a young sailor with appendicitis, gave her a sympathetic smile. "Rough day?" "Every day," Carmela said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She inserted the IV with hands that appeared to shake but found the vein on the first try. Muscle memory didn't lie, even when everything else did. The sailor didn't notice. No one ever noticed. The ER doors burst open with a blast of hot California air and chaos. "Move! Move! Move!" 4 Navy corpsmen rushed through the entrance, pushing a gurney at a dead sprint. The man on the gurney was massive, easily 6'5", probably 260 pounds of solid muscle despite his age. His uniform was shredded, dark with blood, and his face was a mask of rage and pain. "3-star Admiral!" the lead corpsman shouted. "Admiral James Hawthorne!" Multiple GSWs to the chest and abdomen. BP crashing. "He's combative. We couldn't sedate him." The ER erupted into controlled chaos. Dr. Thorne abandoned his resident and sprinted toward Trauma Bay 1. "Get him in here. Someone page surgery. I want 4 units of ONEG stat." Carmela pressed herself against the wall of the corridor, watching. Her gray-blue eyes, usually so carefully avoidant, suddenly tracked every movement with laser precision. She scanned the Admiral's body language, his wound patterns, the way his hands were moving even as blood poured from his chest. He wasn't just combative, he was tactical. "Hold him down," Thorne ordered as they transferred the Admiral to the trauma bed. 5 medical staff tried to restrain him. It was like trying to hold down a wounded grizzly bear. Admiral Hawthorne's eyes were wild, pupils blown wide. He wasn't seeing the hospital. He was seeing something else entirely. "Ambush!" he roared, his voice like gravel. 12 o'clock! RPG inbound! Get to cover! He swung a massive fist, catching an orderly in the chest and sending the man flying into a crash cart. Medical equipment scattered across the floor in a cacophony of metal and plastic. "Restrain him!" Thorne yelled, backing away. "Leather restraints, now!" The Admiral grabbed a nurse by the wrist, not violently, but with military efficiency. He twisted, rotated, and suddenly the nurse was on the ground, and the Admiral had somehow torn free of 2 corpsmen. Blood sprayed across the pristine white tiles. "Jesus Christ, he's going to bleed out!" Dr. Chen screamed. "Someone knock him out." "I tried." A corpsman yelled back, holding up an empty syringe. "He burned through 10 meters of verst like it was nothing." The Admiral rolled off the bed, hitting the floor hard. He immediately swept his hands across his chest, looking for gear that wasn't there. "Radio check," he gasped. "I need extraction. Position compromised." He was checking corners, calculating angles, his training overriding the fact that he was dying. Security burst through the doors. 4 armed guards in tactical gear. "Stand down, sir," the lead guard commanded, his hand on his holstered weapon. "Admiral, you need to stand down." Hawthorne grabbed a metal IV pole, swinging it in a defensive arc. "Get back." "That's an order." His voice carried command authority even through the delirium. "I will not be captured." The security team tried to flank him. The Admiral, despite 3 bullet wounds in his torso and catastrophic blood loss, read their movement instantly. He threw the IV pole like a spear, forcing them to scatter, then dropped into a combat stance that would have been impressive for a man in perfect health. For a dying 60-year-old man, it was terrifying. "He's psychotic," Dr. Thorne declared from behind the overturned gurney he was using as cover. "We need to put him under. Get me propofol, 200 ml a push." "That dose will kill him," Dr. Chen protested. "If we don't stop him, he'll kill someone else first." Carmela Rose stood in the doorway, forgotten. Her trembling hands had gone completely still. Her posture had shifted microscopically, shoulders back, weight balanced. She was watching the Admiral's movements, reading them like a language only she spoke. He wasn't fighting to hurt anyone. He was fighting to survive a threat that only existed in his fractured mind. Classic combat stress reaction triggered by catastrophic trauma. His brain had reverted to the moment of injury, probably an ambush, probably recent, probably classified. The security team was closing in, batons drawn. If they struck him while he was in this state, they'd trigger an escalation. He'd kill someone. Or they'd kill him. Carmela made a decision. She stepped into Trauma Bay 1. "Rose, get out!" Thorne screamed. "That's an order!" She ignored him. She walked slowly, deliberately toward the Admiral. Her hands were open, empty, non-threatening. She kept her body language submissive. But her eyes were locked on his with the intensity that didn't match the rest of her performance. "Admiral Hawthorne," she said softly. Her voice cut through the chaos with unexpected clarity. The Admiral's head snapped toward her. He was swaying, his face gray from blood loss. "Stay back," he growled. But there was less certainty in his voice now. He was confused. She wasn't moving like the others. She wasn't afraid. "Sir," Carmela said, taking another step. "You're not compromised. You're safe." "Liar," he spat. "Hostiles on every—" "Negative," Carmela interrupted, her voice shifting subtly. The timid nurse was gone. This voice was crisp, military, authoritative. "Threat assessment complete. No hostiles present. You're in a hospital, sir. Naval Medical Center, San Diego. You're stateside." The Admiral blinked, his vision focusing on her for the first time. He saw the blue scrubs, the hospital ID badge. But he also saw something else. The way she stood, the way she moved. The absolute absence of fear in her eyes. Who? He started, then stumbled. His knees buckled. Carmela closed the distance in 2 quick strides, catching him before he hit the ground. She was impossibly strong for someone so small, controlling his descent with practiced efficiency. "Easy, Admiral," she said, her voice soft again but carrying steel underneath. "I've got you, but you need to let us work. You're bleeding out." Can't trust," he mumbled, his consciousness fading. And then Carmela leaned close to his ear and whispered 4 words that no one else in the room could hear. "Hawkeye, this is Valkyrie." The Admiral's eyes went wide. His entire body went rigid, every muscle locking. He stared at her face, truly seeing her for the first time, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something approaching disbelief. "Valkyrie," he breathed, his voice barely audible. You're dead," they said. Kandahar, 2019. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," Carmela whispered, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Now stand down, Hawkeye. That's a direct order from your guardian angel." The Admiral's body went limp in her arms. Not unconscious, surrendered. The fight drained out of him all at once, replaced by trust, older and deeper than the wounds trying to kill him. "Valkyrie," he whispered again, his hand reaching up to touch her face as if to confirm she was real. His fingers trembled as they traced the thin scar above her left eyebrow. The legend, "You're real." "Lie down, Admiral," Carmela said gently, easing him back onto the trauma bed that the corpsmen were hastily righting. "Let us save your life. You've got a briefing to give me later." "Yes, ma'am," the Admiral said, and then his eyes rolled back and unconsciousness took him. The entire ER had gone silent. Dr. Thorne stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. Dr. Chen looked like she'd seen a ghost. The security team had lowered their weapons, staring at the small nurse who had just done what 6 trained men couldn't do. Carmela turned to face them, and for just a moment, less than a heartbeat, they saw something in her eyes that made every person in that room take an involuntary step backward. It wasn't anger, it wasn't threat. It was competence so absolute, so total, that it redefined the hierarchy in the room without a single word. Then she blinked, and the trembling, timid nurse was back. "Someone should probably start an IV," she stammered, her hands shaking again as she reached for supplies. He's lost a lot of blood." Dr. Thorne found his voice. "How did you—" "I don't know." Carmela interrupted quickly, not meeting his eyes. I talked to him. He calmed down. Can we save him, please?" She was already working, her trembling hands somehow placing an 18-gauge IV line on the first stick, drawing blood for type and cross, assessing the wounds with a speed that seemed at odds with her apparent nervousness. Dr. Thorne watched her, suspicion flickering across his face. But the Admiral was dying, and questions could wait. "Everyone positions," he barked. "Chen, get a central line in. I want a chest tube kit ready. Rose, hang the blood when it arrives." "Yes, Doctor," Carmela whispered, her head down again. But as she slipped back into her carefully constructed disguise, one of the security guards, a former Army Ranger named Davis, stood in the doorway and watched her with narrowed eyes. He had heard what she said, not the call signs. He'd been too far away for that. But he'd heard her voice change. He'd seen her move. He'd watched a 5'4" nurse control a 6'5" Admiral like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Davis pulled out his phone and took a discreet photo of her hospital ID badge. Something wasn't right about Nurse Carmela Rose, and he was going to find out what. Admiral James Hawthorne survived the surgery. Barely. Dr. Thorne had worked for 4 hours, repairing perforated intestines, a nicked renal artery, and extracting 3 7.62 millimeter rounds that had somehow missed every vital organ by millimeters. It was surgical skill combined with impossible luck. Or maybe not luck. Maybe someone had been protecting him. Carmela Rose stood in the corner of the OR during the entire procedure. handed instruments when asked, kept her eyes down, and said nothing. But twice, when the Admiral's blood pressure crashed and Dr. Thorne froze in indecision, Carmela had quietly adjusted the anesthesia drip and the vasopressor dosages without being asked. Dr. Chen noticed. She said nothing, but she noticed. But the Admiral was moved to the ICU Surgical Wing Level 3, a secure floor reserved for high-ranking military personnel. 2 armed Marines stood outside his door. A third sat inside the room, watching the monitors. Carmela was assigned as his primary nurse for the night shift. Dr. Thorne had made the assignment personally, though his reasons were unclear. Maybe he wanted to see if she'd crack under pressure. Maybe he was testing her. Or maybe he just didn't want to waste a competent nurse on what he assumed would be simple post-op monitoring. "Keep him sedated," Thorne ordered, reviewing the chart at the nurse's station. "No visitors except command staff with clearance. If he wakes up combative again, page me immediately. Do not engage him alone." "Yes, doctor," Carmela whispered, taking the chart with trembling hands. Thorne looked at her with narrowed eyes. "Rose, what you did in the ER today—" "I just talked to him," she interrupted quickly. "I didn't do anything special." "You called him by name, you used his rank. How did you know who he was?" Carmela's face flushed. "The corpsman. They said it when they brought him in. I remembered." It was a lie. The corpsman had said it, but Carmela had known who Admiral James Hawthorne was the moment she saw his face. She'd known him for 15 years, though he had no memory of ever meeting her. Not as Carmela Rose, anyway. Thorne didn't look convinced, but he let it go. "Just watch him. And Rose, don't touch anything you're not qualified to touch." "Yes, doctor." As Thorne walked away, Dr. Chen lingered at the station. She pulled up Carmela's personnel file on the computer, reading through it with careful attention. Carmela Rose, age 32. Graduated from a mid-tier nursing program in Nevada. Average grades, no military service, no prior hospital experience before Naval Medical Center. References checked out. But they were generic, former instructors who barely remembered her. It was a perfectly unremarkable file. Too unremarkable. Chen closed the file and looked toward the ICU where Carmela had disappeared. Something was wrong. The way that nurse had moved in the trauma bay, the way she'd controlled the Admiral, the way her hand suddenly stopped shaking when she placed that IV line. "Dr. Chen?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Davis, the security guard from earlier. "Can I ask you something about Nurse Rose?" Chen's eyes sharpened. "What about her? How long has she worked here?" 8 months, why?" Davis shifted uncomfortably. "I've been doing security here for 3 years. I've seen a lot of nurses handle combative patients. But what she did today—" He shook his head. "That wasn't nursing. That was tactical de-escalation, military grade. You think she has a service record?" "I think someone with her skill set doesn't just end up as a mediocre nurse," Davis said carefully. "I ran her name through the VA database. Nothing. Social Security checks out. Credit history is clean, but it's all very recent. Nothing before 2019. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying she's using a false identity?" "I'm saying someone should ask her the right questions," Davis replied. "Because Admiral Hawthorne recognized her. I saw his face. He knew her." Inside the ICU room, Carmela stood beside the Admiral's bed, checking his vitals. The Marine guard sat in the corner, watching her with the intensity of someone trained to spot threats. The Admiral's face was gray, his breathing assisted by supplemental oxygen. IV lines ran into both arms. A chest tube drained blood-tinged fluid into a collection chamber, and a Foley catheter bag hung from the bed rail, measuring urine output. Carmela's trembling hands moved across the equipment, checking connections, adjusting drip rates. But her eyes were scanning his wounds with a precision that had nothing to do with basic nursing. Entry wounds, center mass, tight grouping, professional shooter. The rounds had tumbled after impact, creating maximum internal damage but somehow missing the aorta and inferior vena cava. The Admiral should be dead. Someone had gotten very lucky. Or very unlucky, depending on what secrets he carried. "Nurse?" The Marine's voice was sharp. Carmela jumped, her submissive posture snapping back into place. "Yes?" "You were staring at him." "I was just checking his breathing," she stammered. "Making sure the oxygen flow is adequate." The Marine didn't look convinced. "What did you say to him? In the ER? I saw you lean down and whisper something. What was it?" Carmela's heart hammered against her ribs. "I just told him he was safe, that's all." "He called you something. A name. What was it?" "I don't know what you mean," Carmela lied, her voice barely audible. "He was delirious. He was saying a lot of things." The Marine stood up, taking a step toward her. He was 6'2", muscular, intimidating. "Ma'am, with respect, I've been doing close protection for 8 years. I know when someone is lying." Carmela backed toward the door, her eyes wide, her body language screaming vulnerability. "I'm not lying. I don't know anything. I'm just a nurse. Please, I need to check on other patients." The heart monitor alarm suddenly shrieked. Both Carmela and the Marine spun toward the bed. Admiral Hawthorne's body was seizing, his back arching off the mattress, his teeth clenched. The monitor showed a heart rate of 180 and climbing. "Code blue!" the Marine yelled, lunging for the emergency button. But Carmela was already moving. She didn't run for help. She didn't freeze in panic. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her trembling gone, her movements suddenly fluid and precise. She grabbed the Admiral's jaw, forcing his head to the side to prevent him from aspirating. Her other hand slammed down on the code button. "Vitach!" she snapped, reading the monitor. "He's coding! Get the crash cart!" The Marine stared at her. The terrified, stuttering nurse from 10 seconds ago had vanished. This woman had command presence. "Now!" Carmela roared, and the Marine ran. The code team burst through the door 30 seconds later, Dr. Chen leading, 2 nurses and a respiratory therapist behind her. They found Carmela performing chest compressions with textbook precision, her small frame generating enough force to make the Admiral's entire body compress with each thrust. "How long?" Dr. Chen demanded. Taking position at the head of the bed. 45 seconds, Carmela said, not stopping compressions. VTASH deteriorated to V-fib, no pulse. "I've been compressing at 110 per minute, depth approximately 2 inches. Dr. Chen blinked. That was the exact protocol. Perfect rate, perfect depth, perfect terminology. This wasn't a mediocre nurse. This was someone with advanced cardiac life support training. "Charge to 200, Chen ordered. "Everyone clear." Carmela stepped back. The shock delivered. The Admiral's body convulsed. The monitor showed continued V-fib. "Resume compressions," Chen said. "Charge to 300. Push 1 milligram of EPI." Carmela started compressions again. But as she worked, Dr. Chen noticed something that made her blood run cold. Carmela's hands weren't just doing compressions. Between cycles, in the brief pauses, her fingers were palpating the Admiral's chest, feeling along the ribs, checking something. "Rose, what are you doing?" Chen asked sharply. "Rib fracture," Carmela said, her voice steady and clinical. "Left side, ribs 7 and 8. I felt crepitus. If we keep compressing at this angle, we'll drive the fracture into his lung. We need to adjust hand position 2 centimeters medial." Dr. Chen stared at her. A mediocre nurse wouldn't know to check for rib fractures during CPR. A mediocre nurse wouldn't know the term crepitus. A mediocre nurse wouldn't have the presence of mind to adjust compressions to prevent a pneumothorax. "How do you—" Chen started. "Shock him," Carmela interrupted, stepping back. "Now." Chen delivered the second shock. This time the monitor showed a rhythm. Slow, irregular, but a rhythm. "Sinus bradycardia," Carmela announced. "Rate 45. Push atropine, 0.5 milligrams. "I didn't ask for your—" Chen began, but stopped. Because Carmela was right. That was exactly the correct intervention. Chen administered the atropine. The Admiral's heart rate climbed to 70. Stable. His chest rose and fell with ventilator breaths. The room exhaled collectively. "He's stable," Dr. Chen said, checking the monitor. "Pulse is steady. BP is 110/70. He's back." Carmela stepped away from the bed, and as she did, the transformation reversed. Her shoulders hunched. Her hands started trembling. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have. I just reacted." Dr. Chen grabbed her arm. "Rose, look at me." Carmela didn't look up. "Look at me." Carmela raised her eyes slowly. They were wide, frightened, the perfect image of a terrified nurse who had just been involved in her first code. But Dr. Chen had seen the truth. For 60 seconds. This woman had run that code with the precision of an ICU specialist. "Who are you?" Chen asked quietly. "I'm just a nurse," Carmela whispered. "Bullshit." Before Carmela could respond, a weak voice came from the bed. "Valkyrie." Everyone turned. Admiral Hawthorne's eyes were half open, unfocused, but he was staring directly at Carmela. "Valkyrie," he repeated, his voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. "Kandahar, you saved 12 men." Dr. Chen's grip on Carmela's arm tightened. "What is he talking about?" "He's delirious," Carmela said quickly. "Post-cardiac arrest confusion. It's normal." "You're the guardian angel," the Admiral slurred, his hand reaching weakly toward her. "They said you died, but you're here. How?" His eyes rolled back. Unconsciousness reclaimed him. The room was silent. Dr. Chen released Carmela's arm and took a step back. "Nurse Rose, you're relieved of duty, effective immediately." "But that wasn't a request. Go home. Don't come back until we've had a conversation with HR and security." Carmela's face went pale. "Dr. Chen, please, I need this job." "Then you'll answer some questions," Chen said coldly. "Because right now, I don't know if you're a hero or a threat. And until I do, you're not touching another patient in this hospital." Carmela stood frozen for a moment, then nodded. She walked toward the door, head down, shoulders hunched. But as she passed the Marine guard, he saw something that made him reach for his radio. The thin scar above her left eyebrow. The small shrapnel marks on her hands. The way she moved, even in defeat, weight balanced, always aware of exits. "Control, this is Davis," he said quietly into it. "I need a background check." "Priority level. Subject is Carmela Rose, RN. I think we have an infiltrator." Carmela Rose didn't go home. She went to the hospital parking garage, climbed into her beat-up Honda Civic, and sat in the darkness, thinking. This was bad. She'd been made. Not completely, but enough that questions would be asked. Questions she couldn't answer without burning her cover entirely. She pulled out a burner phone from under the driver's seat and dialed a number she'd memorized but never called. It rang once. "Valkyrie." The voice on the other end was crisp, military, female. "You're not supposed to contact us unless—" "I'm compromised," Carmela said quietly. "The Admiral recognized me. He said my call sign in front of witnesses." Silence on the line. Then, "Extraction protocol?" "Not yet. He's still critical. If I disappear now, they'll know something's wrong, and whoever shot him will finish the job." "That's not your mission." "It is now," Carmela said firmly. "He didn't get shot by accident." 3 rounds. Center mass. Professional grouping. Someone wanted him dead. And I'm the only person in this hospital who can keep him alive long enough to find out why. Another pause. "You're requesting operational authority?" "I'm requesting 24 hours. If I can't secure the situation by then, I'll disappear. But Hawkeye knows something. Something worth killing an admiral over." "Valkyrie, your cover is more important than one man." "He's not just one man," Carmela said, her voice hard. "He's the commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. If someone is hunting SEALs at the command level, we need to know who and why." The voice on the other end sighed. 24 hours. Then we burn your identity and relocate you. Understood?" "Understood." The line went dead. Carmela sat in the darkness of her car, staring at the concrete wall in front of her. 24 hours. She had 24 hours to figure out who wanted Admiral Hawthorne dead, keep him alive, and do it all without revealing that Nurse Carmela Rose was actually Lieutenant Commander Carmela Torres, former DevGru operator, presumed killed in action in Kandahar 2019. No pressure. Her burner phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Security footage from ER being reviewed. You have watchers. Carmela cursed under her breath. Of course they were reviewing the footage. They'd see her whisper to the Admiral. They'd see the way she moved. They'd see everything. She started the car and drove, not home, but to a 24-hour diner 3 miles from the hospital. She needed to think. She needed a plan. Inside the diner, she ordered coffee and sat in a corner booth where she could watch the door. Old habits. She pulled out a small notebook and started writing, not in English, in a tactical shorthand she'd developed during her years in the teams. If someone found the notebook, it would look like gibberish. Threat assessment. Admiral shot by professional. 3 rounds, 7.62. Sniper, close-range execution, timing, shot 6 hours before arrival at hospital. Where was he? Why not finish him? Left alive intentionally? Wanted him to talk first? Hospital security compromised? Inside job? Cover status. Doctor. Chen suspicious security guard Davis actively investigating ER footage exists. Admiral knows real identity. Will talk when conscious options. Disappear now. Safest for cover. Leaves Admiral vulnerable. Stay and protect. Risks exposure. Protects asset. Eliminate threat before extraction. Requires identifying shooter. Carmela circled option 3. She needed to know who shot the Admiral, and she had a feeling he knew exactly who it was. Long night? Carmela's hand instinctively moved toward her waistband before she remembered she wasn't armed. She looked up. It was Davis, the security guard from the hospital. He slid into the booth across from her without invitation, his eyes hard and assessing. "How did you find me?" Carmela asked, her voice small and frightened. The timid nurse was back. "I followed you from the hospital," Davis said bluntly. "You're not very good at counter-surveillance for someone who's supposedly just a nurse." Carmela's heart raced. "I don't know what—" "Cut the act," Davis interrupted. "I was Army Rangers, 75th Regiment. I've worked with JSOC operators. I know how they move. I know how they talk. And I know you're not a mediocre nurse who barely passed her certification." Carmela said nothing. She evaluated him carefully. 6'2", approximately 220 pounds. Athletic build visible under his security uniform. Wedding ring. 42 years old based on the file she'd memorized when she first arrived at the hospital. Honorable discharge, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. A soldier. Not an enemy. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "The truth," Davis said. "Because Admiral Hawthorne is in my hospital. On my watch. And someone tried to kill him today. And the only person who could calm him down, the only person he trusts, is a nurse who shouldn't exist." "I exist," Carmela said softly. "I'm sitting right here." "Carmela Rose exists," Davis corrected. "But who are you really?" Before she could answer, her burner phone buzzed again. She glanced at it. The message made her blood run cold. Second attempt imminent. Hawthorne compromised. Asset inside hospital. Carmela stood up abruptly. "I have to go back." "Back where?" "The hospital. Someone's going to try to kill him again. Tonight." Davis stood with her. "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do," Carmela said. And for the first time, the mask slipped completely. Her voice was hard, tactical, commanding. "The first attempt failed. He's vulnerable in the ICU. Limited security. If I were running the op, I'd hit him within the next 6 hours, before he regains consciousness and talks." Davis stared at her. This wasn't the trembling nurse. This was a warrior. "Who are you?" he asked again. Carmela looked him in the eye. She made a decision. She didn't have time to operate alone, and she needed someone inside the hospital who understood what was coming. "My name is Commander Carmela Torres," she said quietly. Dev Gru, SEAL Team 6. I was the first woman to pass selection. I operated for 8 years before I was declared killed in action in 2019. I've been undercover ever since. And right now, Admiral Hawthorne is the only person who knows where 12 missing SEALs are being held. If he dies, they die. Davis processed this information in silence. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Who are you calling?" Carmela demanded. "Hospital Security Command. We're locking down the ICU. No one in or out without clearance." "That won't stop a professional." "Then what will?" Carmela's eyes were cold and gray-blue, like winter water. "Me." They arrived back at the hospital 18 minutes later. The ICU floor was quiet, the lights dimmed for night shift. 2 Marines still stood outside the Admiral's door, alert and armed. Carmela approached the nurses' station. The night shift supervisor, an older woman named Patricia, looked up in surprise. "Rose, you were sent home." "I know," Carmela said, her voice trembling again. The mask was back. "But I forgot my jacket. Can I just grab it from the break room?" Patricia frowned, but nodded. "Make it quick." Carmela walked past the nurses' station, but instead of going to the break room, she slipped into the supply closet. Davis followed, keeping watch. Inside the closet, Carmela's hands moved with blinding speed. She grabbed surgical gloves, a scalpel, sutures, hemostatic gauze, and a small bottle of lidocaine. She stuffed them into her jacket pockets. "What are you doing?" Davis whispered. "Preparing," Carmela said. "If someone hits the Admiral tonight, there won't be time for a code team. I'll have to stabilize him myself." "You're a nurse, not a surgeon. Not a—" Carmela looked at him with eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine. "I'm a combat medic with battlefield surgical training. I've done thoracotomies in the back of helicopters and cricothyrotomies under enemy fire. I can keep him alive." Davis believed her. They exited the supply closet and nearly ran into Dr. Chen, who was reviewing charts at the station. "Rose," Chen said sharply, "I told you to go home." "I'm sorry, Dr. Chen, I just needed—" An alarm shrieked. All 3 of them spun toward the ICU rooms. The alarm was coming from Admiral Hawthorne's room. The Marines outside the door were already moving, weapons drawn, rushing inside. Carmela ran. She burst into the room ahead of Dr. Chen, ahead of Davis, ahead of everyone. The Admiral was seizing again, but this time it was different. This wasn't cardiac arrest, this was neurological. And standing beside his IV pump, adjusting a syringe port, was one of the night shift nurses. A man Carmela had seen before but never spoken to. His name tag read, Morrison. Morrison looked up as Carmela entered. His eyes widened in recognition and calculation. Then he ran. He bolted for the door, shoving past the Marines with surprising strength. One Marine grabbed him, but Morrison twisted, striking the Marine's throat with a precise blow that dropped him instantly. "Stop him!" Carmela screamed. But Morrison was already in the hallway, sprinting toward the emergency stairs. Davis tackled him 10 feet from the stairwell door. They went down hard, Morrison fighting with the trained efficiency of someone with serious combat experience. He drove an elbow into Davis's ribs, rolled free, and reached for something in his pocket. Carmela was on him before he could draw it. She hit him with a flying knee strike that would have made her instructors proud, driving her knee into his solar plexus with enough force to lift him off the ground. Morrison collapsed, gasping, and Carmela pinned him face down, wrenching his arm behind his back with a joint lock that made him scream. "Don't move," she said quietly, her voice absolutely calm. "Or I'll dislocate your shoulder, then your elbow, then I'll start on the other arm." Davis stared at her. The Marines stared at her. Dr. Chen, arriving in the hallway, stared at her. The trembling, incompetent nurse had just taken down a trained assassin in 3 seconds. Morrison spat blood on the floor. "You're dead, Valkyrie," he hissed. "You and everyone you care about. Ghost Ship knows you're alive now. They'll come for—" Carmela increased pressure on the joint lock. Morrison screamed and went silent. "Get him to security." Carmela ordered the Marines, her voice carrying command authority that made them obey without question. "And check his pockets. He was reaching for something, probably a weapon or a cyanide pill." The Marines hauled Morrison to his feet and dragged him away. Carmela turned and ran back to the Admiral's room. She checked the IV pump. Someone had injected something into the line. She traced it back. Potassium chloride, enough to cause hyperkalemia and cardiac arrest within minutes. She ripped the IV line out, drew blood for an emergency potassium level, and started a new line with normal saline. Calcium gluconate, 10 milliliters IV push, she ordered no one in particular. He's hyperkalemic. We need to stabilize his cardiac membranes now or he'll arrest. Dr. Chen, finally finding her voice, grabbed the medication and administered it without question. The Admiral's heart rhythm stabilized. The room fell silent, except for the beeping of monitors. Dr. Chen turned slowly to look at Carmela Rose. "Who the hell are you?" Carmela met her eyes. The mask was gone. The truth was standing in the middle of the ICU, covered in a would-be assassin's blood, holding the life of an admiral in her steady, scarred hands. "I'm the reason he's still alive," Carmela said quietly. "And if you want him to stay that way, you'll let me do my job." The hospital director's office was cold and unwelcoming at 3 a.m. Commander Rebecca Walsh sat behind her desk, flanked by two men in dark suits who hadn't introduced themselves. They didn't need to. Carmela recognized federal agents when she saw them. Dr. Chen stood to the side, arms crossed. Davis was there too, positioned near the door like a guard. And Carmela sat in the center of it all, still wearing her blood-stained scrubs, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "Nurse Rose," Director Walsh began, her voice tight with controlled anger. "In the past 8 hours, you have restrained a combative admiral using techniques that disabled 6 trained personnel, run a code blue with ICU-level precision, and physically subdued an assassin with what witnesses describe as special operations combat tactics. Would you care to explain?" Carmela kept her eyes down, her voice soft. "I just did what I was trained to do, ma'am." "Trained by whom?" one of the suits demanded. "Your nursing school record shows average performance, no military service, no martial arts background, yet you moved like a SEAL." Carmela said nothing. The second suit leaned forward. "Miss Rose, or whoever you are, Admiral Hawthorne is the commander of Naval Special Warfare. The man you subdued, Jeffrey Morrison, is former CIA. He wasn't here to steal medication. He was here to finish an assassination. And you stopped him like you knew exactly what was happening." "I got lucky," Carmela whispered. "Nobody gets that lucky." The suit snapped. He slid a photograph across the desk. "This was taken from security footage. Enhance the image near your left eyebrow. That scar. It matches the description of an operator presumed KIA in 2019. Commander Carmela Torres, DevGru. The first female SEAL. The legend they called Valkyrie." The room went silent. Carmela slowly raised her eyes. The mask was still there, but cracks were showing. "Commander Torres died in Kandahar," she said quietly. "That's what the file says." "The file says a lot of things," the suit replied. "But Admiral Hawthorne called you by your call sign, and you responded. So I'll ask you again. Who are you?" Before Carmela could answer, the door burst open. A Marine captain entered, holding a tablet. "Sir, we have a problem. Morrison talked before he took his cyanide pill." Everyone turned. "He said there's a secondary team," the captain continued. "Ghost ship operatives. They're hitting the hospital at 2600 to eliminate the Admiral and anyone who knows about Operation Nightfall. That's 90 minutes from now." Director Walsh went pale. "Evacuate the Admiral immediately. Get him to a secure—" "He can't be moved," Dr. Chen interrupted. "His condition is too unstable. Moving him will kill him." "Then we fortify this location," the first suit said. He looked at the Marine captain. "How many security personnel do we have?" 12 Marines, 6 hospital security. Against a professional kill team? We're outgunned." The suit turned to Carmela. "Commander Torres, if that's who you really are, we need your help." Carmela stood slowly. When she spoke, her voice had changed completely. The trembling was gone. The submission was gone. What remained was pure command presence. "I'll help," she said. "But we do this my way. No bureaucracy, no red tape. You give me operational authority over this hospital's defense for the next 2 hours, or the Admiral dies and Ghost Ship disappears. Director Walsh looked at the suits. The suits looked at each other. Finally, the first one nodded. You have tactical command, Commander. What do you need? Carmela's gray-blue eyes hardened. First, I need everyone out of this floor except essential personnel. Second, I need Davis and every combat-trained veteran in this hospital armed and positioned at choke points. Third, I need the Admiral moved to an interior room with no windows and only one entry point. She turned to Dr. Chen. And I need you to trust me, because what's about to happen is going to be ugly and I need a surgeon standing by. Doctor. Chen stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll prep an OR. Good. Carmela looked at the Marine captain. Get your men positioned. They're going to hit the south entrance. It's the weakest point. I want overlapping fields of fire, but nobody engages until I give the order. We let them penetrate. Then we collapse on them. That's a kill box, the captain said with dawning realization. That's a trap, Carmela corrected. They're expecting resistance. We're going to give them a target, and then we're going to eliminate them. The suits exchanged glances. Commander, we need at least one alive for interrogation. I'll see what I can do, Carmela said coldly. But if it's between prisoners and protecting the Admiral, I'm choosing the Admiral. She walked toward the door, then paused. And get me body armor and a weapon. I'm not fighting in scrubs with a scalpel this time. 50 minutes later, Carmela Rose no longer existed. Commander Carmela Torres stood in the ICU hallway wearing a borrowed tactical vest over her scrubs, a Sig Sauer P320 holstered at her hip, and an M4 carbine slung across her chest. Her dirty blonde hair was pulled back in a tight military bun, not a single strand loose. The scar above her left eyebrow was visible now, a badge she no longer tried to hide. Davis stood beside her, similarly armed. Behind them, 6 Marines had positioned themselves in a defensive perimeter around the Admiral's new room, a windowless supply area converted into a makeshift ICU. They'll come in fast, Carmela said, checking her rifle. 4 to 6 operators, suppressed weapons. They'll use flashbangs to disorient, then execute the target and anyone nearby. Standard Black Ops protocol. How do you know? Davis asked. Because I've run this exact op, Carmela said quietly. 12 times. I know how they think. Her radio crackled. Commander, this is Perimeter Watch. We have movement. 3 vehicles, blacked-out SUVs, approaching from the south. Copy, Carmela replied. Hold positions. Nobody fires until they're inside the kill box. She turned to Davis. When this starts, it's going to be fast and loud. Stay behind cover, aim center mass, don't hesitate. These aren't soldiers. They're mercenaries. They'll kill you without thinking twice. Understood. Carmela moved to a position where she could see both the main corridor and the Admiral's room. Her heart was steady. Her hands were steady. This was what she was made for. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Somewhere below, an explosion rocked the building. The south entrance breached. Contact. The radio squawked. Multiple hostiles, main corridor, moving fast. Gunfire erupted. Suppressed rifles and the heavier crack of Marine M4s. Carmela waited. She heard boots on tile. Professional movement. 3 operators appeared at the end of the hallway, weapons up, scanning for targets. They saw the Marines first. Muzzle flashes lit up the corridor. 1 Marine went down, then another. Carmela stepped out from cover. She fired 3 rounds in rapid succession. The first operator dropped. The second took cover. The third turned toward her. Carmela put 2 rounds through his plate carrier at the exact angle where the armor plates didn't overlap. He fell. Flank left, she shouted to Davis. They moved like they'd trained together for years. Davis covered right, Carmela moved left, and they caught the remaining operators in a crossfire. It was over in 30 seconds. 4 bodies. No prisoners. Clear, Carmela called, sweeping the corridor with her rifle. But her instincts screamed wrong. This was too easy. Ghost Ship wouldn't send just 1 team. Davis, check the ceiling exploded above the Admiral's room. Two operators rappelled down through the hole, bypassing all their defenses, landing directly in front of the door where the Admiral lay helpless. Carmela ran. She covered 30 feet in 4 seconds. But it wasn't fast enough. The operators breached the door, flashbang detonated inside, and she heard Dr. Chen scream. Carmela hit the doorway in a diving roll, came up firing. The first operator turned toward her. She shot him twice in the face. The second had his rifle aimed at the Admiral's bed. Carmela couldn't shoot. Dr. Chen was behind him. So she didn't shoot. She threw her rifle like a spear, hitting him in the shoulder, then closed the distance before he could recover. She drove her knee into his gut, grabbed his weapon arm, twisted, and broke his elbow with a sickening crack. He screamed and tried to draw a sidearm. Carmela kicked it away, swept his legs, and put him on the ground. She had her Sig Sauer pressed against his temple before he could breathe. "Don't move," she said calmly. The operator stared up at her, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Valkyrie," he gasped, "you're supposed to be dead." "I got better," Carmela said. "Now tell me who sent you, or I'll put a round through your skull and ask your partner." "He's dead." "Then you're my only source." The operator smiled, blood on his teeth. "Ghost ship doesn't leave witnesses. You know that." "Then I guess you're about to become a ghost," Carmela said, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed in the small room. Dr. Chen screamed. Davis appeared in the doorway, weapon raised. But Carmela hadn't killed him. The round had gone into the concrete beside his head. "Last chance," she said quietly. "Talk, or the next one goes through your eye." The operator broke. "Admiral found something. Operation Nightfall. Black site locations. 12 SEALs being held for interrogation. Ghost ship is cleaning house before it goes public." "Where's the data?" "I don't know. He hid it before we hit him. That's why we needed him alive initially." Carmela pressed the barrel harder against his head. "Who's running Ghost ship?" The operator's eyes widened in terror. Not of her, of something worse. "If I tell you, they'll kill my family. If you don't tell me, I'll kill you right now." He broke. He whispered a name. Carmela's blood ran cold. The name the operator whispered changed everything. "Director Walsh," Carmela said into her radio, her voice tight. "Lock down the entire hospital, nobody in or out, and get those federal agents to the ICU immediately. We have a bigger problem." Davis stared at her. "Who did he name?" "Later," Carmela said, zip-tying the wounded operator's hands behind his back. She turned to Dr. Chen, who was pressed against the wall, shaking. "You okay?" Chen nodded shakily. I've never seen anything like that." "Welcome to my world," Carmela said grimly. She checked the Admiral's vitals. Still stable, somehow sleeping through the chaos with the help of sedatives. "Stay with him. Don't let anyone in this room except me or Davis. Anyone. Understood?" "Understood." Carmela and Davis dragged the wounded operator into the hallway just as the 2 federal agents arrived, weapons drawn. "Commander." "What happened?" the first agent demanded. "Ghost ship sent 2 teams," Carmela reported. "We eliminated 7 operatives. This one talked." She nodded toward the prisoner. "You'll want to hear what he said." "And what did he say?" Carmela looked at them with eyes that had gone cold as winter. "He said the person running Ghost ship, the person who ordered the Admiral's assassination, is Vice Admiral Richard Keller, Deputy Commander of Naval Special Warfare, the Admiral's second-in-command." The agents went pale. "That's impossible," the second agent said. "Keller has been in the Navy for 30 years. He's a decorated—" "He's a traitor," Carmela interrupted. "And he's the reason 12 SEALs are being tortured in black sites right now. The Admiral found proof. That's why Keller tried to kill him." The first agent grabbed his phone. "I need to report this to—" "Don't," Carmela said sharply. "If Keller has reach enough to send ghost ship operators, he has reach enough to monitor communications. The second you make that call, he'll know we're onto him." "Then what do you suggest?" "We wait for the Admiral to wake up," Carmela said. "He's the only one who knows where the evidence is hidden. Once we have that, We can bring down Keller and his entire operation. And if Keller sends more operators? Then we kill them too, Carmela said flatly. The Marines were securing the floor when Admiral Hawthorne's eyes opened. It was 800. Golden California sunlight was streaming through the undamaged windows at the far end of the corridor. The Admiral lay in his makeshift ICU room, surrounded by armed guards, medical equipment, and the woman who had saved his life 3 times in 12 hours. Carmela sat beside his bed, still wearing the tactical vest over her scrubs. Her rifle leaned against the wall within easy reach. "Valkyrie," the Admiral rasped, his voice weak but clear. "Admiral," Carmela replied. "Welcome back." He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much war. "I thought you were dead. I needed people to think that. After Kandahar, after what we found." She shook her head. "It was safer for everyone if Valkyrie died. But you're here now. Because you're in danger. And because 12 of our brothers are being held in black sites. Tortured for information about operations that should never have existed in the first place." The Admiral closed his eyes. "Operation Nightfall." The operator confirmed it. "Keller is running Ghost Ship. He's eliminating anyone who knows about the black sites." "Not just Keller," the Admiral said quietly. "It goes higher, Joint Chiefs level." "Maybe higher." Carmela felt the weight of that statement. "How high?" "High enough that I couldn't go through official channels. I had to hide the evidence where even our own people couldn't find it." "Where is it?" The Admiral looked at her. "Do you remember the safe house in Coronado? The one we used for Team 6 debriefs? The one that officially doesn't exist?" "Yes. The evidence is there. Hidden in the false wall behind the armory. Drives, documents, recordings. Everything needed to expose Nightfall and bring down everyone involved. Including Keller. Especially Keller." Carmela stood. "Then we get it. Today. Before he realizes you're still alive and talking." "Valkyrie, wait." The Admiral grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "Keller has eyes everywhere. The second you go for that safe house, he'll know. He'll send everything he has." "Let him," Carmela said coldly. "I've been hiding for 5 years. I'm done hiding." The Admiral studied her face. "You've changed." "I died," Carmela said simply. "I'm not the same person who walked into Kandahar. None of us are." Carmela gently removed his hand from her wrist. "Rest, Admiral. I'll get the evidence. And then we're bringing all of them down." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Sir, thank you. For recognizing me, for saying my call sign. If you hadn't, I might have stood by and let them kill you. I knew it was you the moment you touched me," the Admiral said. "Valkyrie always had the steadiest hands I'd ever seen. Even when the world was ending, you never shook." Carmela looked down at her hands. They were perfectly still. "I shake now," she admitted. "But only when I'm pretending to be someone else." 40 minutes later, Carmela and Davis were in an unmarked SUV heading south toward Coronado. The 2 federal agents followed in a second vehicle. They'd contacted a SEAL team commander they trusted, one of the few people in naval special warfare who wasn't connected to Keller. "This is insane," Davis said, checking his rifle. "We're about to break into a classified facility to steal evidence against a vice admiral." "Not steal," Carmela corrected. "Retrieve. The evidence belongs to the Admiral. We're just collecting it. You know Keller will have people watching that safe house." "I'm counting on it." Davis looked at her. "You want them to come." "I want Keller to commit his remaining assets," Carmela said. "Because once they're dead, he'll have nothing left. He'll be exposed, vulnerable. Then we take him down." They arrived at the safe house just after Aero 900. It looked like an ordinary beach house, faded blue paint and weathered deck furniture. Nothing suggested it was a SEAL team operations center. Carmela approached the door, keyed in a code that should have been changed years ago but apparently hadn't been, and entered. The interior was dark, dusty, clearly unused for months. "Clear the rooms," Carmela ordered. "I'll get the evidence." She moved to the back bedroom, pushed aside a false panel, and found the armory. Just as the Admiral described, false wall, hidden compartment. She pulled out 3 hard drives, a folder of documents, and a small digital recorder. "Got it," she called to Davis. That's when the windows exploded. Flashbangs detonated in every room simultaneously. The world turned white, and the sound hit like a physical blow. Carmela dropped behind a desk, her training overriding her senses. She couldn't see, couldn't hear, but she could move. She drew her sidearm and fired 3 rounds through the nearest window, not aimed, just suppression fire. Her vision cleared enough to see 4 operators breaching through the front door. Davis was down, clutching his ears, disoriented. The federal agents were pinned outside by sniper fire. Carmela was alone, 4 against 1. She smiled. These weren't just any operators. She recognized their gear, their movement. Former DevGru. They knew exactly how good she was, but they didn't know she'd gotten better. The first operator came through fast. Carmela led him. She kicked the desk toward him, using it as a moving barrier, then vaulted over it and drove her knife into the gap between his helmet and vest. He dropped. The second operator fired. Rounds tore through the desk. Carmela rolled left, came up behind cover, and threw the knife. It caught him in the throat. 2 down. The remaining 2 spread out, professional, cautious. They knew she was lethal. "Valkyrie," one of them called out. "Keller says if you surrender now, he'll let you live." "Tell Keller I'm coming for him next," Carmela shouted back. "Right after I kill both of you." They came at her from 2 angles. She grabbed the digital recorder, small, heavy, metal, and threw it at the operator on the left. It hit his night vision goggles, shattering them. He stumbled back, blind. The operator on the right fired. Rounds stitched across the wall where Carmela had been a second ago. She'd already moved, circling behind him with inhuman speed. She hit him with a strike to the kidney, grabbed his rifle, and used his own momentum to drive him into the wall. His helmet cracked against drywall. She disarmed him, reversed the rifle, and put 3 rounds through his vest at contact distance. The last operator, his night vision destroyed, fired wildly. Carmela dropped flat, rolled, and came up inside his range. She grabbed his rifle barrel, redirected it upward, and delivered a palm strike to his chin that snapped his head back. He went down hard. 4 bodies, 60 seconds. Carmela stood in the ruins of the safe house, breathing hard. Blood on her hands, not hers, and the evidence still clutched in her grip. Davis groaned, sitting up. "What the hell just happened?" Happened," Carmela said quietly. She helped him to his feet. The federal agents were entering cautiously, staring at the carnage. "Commander," the first agent said, his voice awed. "That was necessary." Carmela interrupted. "And we need to move. Now. Keller knows we have the evidence. He'll go to ground or run. Then we arrest him immediately." "No," Carmela said. "We expose him, publicly, so he can't disappear into the bureaucracy." She held up the digital recorder. "The Admiral said there are recordings. If we can get this to the media." "To Congress, to everyone. Keller's finished." The second agent nodded. "I have contacts at the Washington Post. If the evidence is as damning as you say—" "It's worse than damning," Carmela said. "It's the end of everyone involved in Operation Nightfall." She looked at the bodies on the floor. Former brothers. Men who had chosen money and power over honor. "Let's finish this." Vice Admiral Richard Keller was arrested at 1600 hours in his office at Naval Special Warfare Command. The arrest was carried out by NCIS agents with the Washington Post already running the headline, "Black Site Scandal. Senior naval officer implicated in illegal detention of U.S. military personnel." The evidence from the safe house was devastating. Recordings of Keller ordering the Admiral's assassination. Documents showing the locations of 12 SEALs being held without trial. Financial records proving Ghost Ship was funded through black budget operations. By 1800 hours, the story had gone viral. By 2000 hours, 3 members of the Joint Chiefs had resigned. By 2100 hours, Carmela Torres stood in Admiral Hawthorne's hospital room. watching the news coverage on the small TV mounted to the wall. "It's over," the Admiral said from his bed. He was still weak, still recovering, but alive. "Not over," Carmela corrected. "Just beginning. Those 12 SEALs need to be extracted, the black sites need to be dismantled, and everyone involved needs to face justice." "Agreed." The Admiral looked at her. "Which is why I'm recommending you for reinstatement. Full rank, full honors. Commander Carmela Torres, back from the dead." Carmela shook her head. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I've been dead for 5 years, sir. I've built a life in the shadows. People I care about think I'm gone. Coming back means answering questions I don't want to answer." "You saved my life," the Admiral said. "You exposed the biggest scandal in naval special warfare history. You deserve recognition." "I deserve peace," Carmela said quietly. She pulled off the tactical vest, revealing the blue scrubs underneath. "And maybe I found it. Being a nurse. Helping people without the violence." "But you're not just a nurse," the Admiral pressed. "You're Valkyrie. You're a warrior." "I'm both," Carmela said. "And maybe that's okay." Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, holding a tablet. "Commander Torres, may I speak with you?" Carmela followed her into the hallway. "I reviewed your personnel file," Chen said. "The real one. DevGru, 8 years of operations, classified missions I don't have clearance to read about. You're a legend." "I'm a survivor," Carmela corrected. "You're also the best trauma response nurse I've ever seen," Chen continued. "And this hospital needs people like you. People who understand what our patients have been through." Carmela looked at her, surprised. "I'm offering you a job," Chen said. "Not as Carmela Rose, as yourself. Commander Torres, military liaison and trauma specialist. We have veterans coming through here every day with wounds we can't see. They need someone who understands. Someone who's been there." "You want me to stay?" Carmela said slowly. "I want you to stop hiding," Chen replied. "You've earned the right to be yourself." Carmela thought about it. 5 years in the shadows. 5 years of pretending, of being less than she was. "I'll think about it," she finally said. 3 days later, Admiral Hawthorne was stable enough to be transferred to Bethesda for continued treatment. All 12 missing SEALs had been located, and extraction operations were underway. Vice Admiral Keller and 7 other officers were in custody awaiting court-martial. And Carmela Torres stood in the hospital parking garage beside her beat-up Honda Civic, packed with the few belongings she'd accumulated as Carmela Rose. Davis approached, no longer in security uniform, but in civilian clothes. "So you're leaving?" "I am," Carmela confirmed. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can figure out who Carmela Torres is supposed to be now." Davis handed her a card. "If you ever need anything. A job, a reference, someone to watch your 6, call me." Carmela took the card, studied it. "You're a good man, Davis. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for saving all of us." She got in her car, started the engine. But before she drove away, she looked up at the hospital building where she'd spent 8 months pretending to be someone else. Maybe Dr. Chen was right. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Carmela pulled out her phone and made a call. "This is Commander Carmela Torres," she said when the line connected. "I'm requesting reinstatement to active duty, but I want a new assignment, not operations, training. I want to teach the next generation of SEALs how to survive what I survived." The voice on the other end asked a question. "Yes," Carmela said, smiling. "Valkyrie is coming home." She hung up and drove away from Naval Medical Center for the last time. Behind her, the sun was setting over San Diego, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Ahead of her, the road stretched into darkness, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She'd been a warrior. She'd been a ghost. She'd been a nurse. Now she was going to be herself. And that was enough. 6 months later, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes stood in front of 40 SEAL candidates at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Coronado. They were the first co-ed class in the program's history. Today, a voice said from behind her. "You're going to learn about trauma medicine in combat scenarios." The candidates turned. A woman walked into the room. She was small, maybe 5'4", with dirty blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun. She wore Navy utilities with commander's insignia. A thin scar marked her left eyebrow. "I'm Commander Carmela Rose," she said, her gray-blue eyes scanning the room with the intensity of someone who had seen too much war. "Call sign Valkyrie. I was the first woman to complete SEAL training. I operated with DevGru for 8 years. I've saved lives in combat zones from Afghanistan to Syria. And I've killed enemies of this country in over 40 missions." The room was absolutely silent. "But the most important thing I ever did," Valkyrie continued, "was learn when not to fight. When to be the healer instead of the warrior. Because at the end of the day, our job isn't to take lives, it's to protect them." She smiled, and it transformed her face from intimidating to almost kind. "So, let's get started. Pair up. Today we're learning how to perform a needle decompression in the field. And trust me, by the end of this course, your hands will be steady enough to do it in the dark, under fire, with your best friend bleeding out beside you." The candidates paired off, energized and focused, and Carmela Rose, Valkyrie, walked among them, teaching the next generation how to survive the wars she'd barely escaped. She was home. The end. This story reminds us that heroes come in many forms. Sometimes they wear uniforms and medals. Sometimes they wear scrubs and move in shadows. But always, they stand between the innocent and the darkness, refusing to yield. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable human spirit. What did you think of Valkyrie's journey? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.